Welcome, wanderer. Wherever you are, however your day has been, you're here now. And that's enough. Take a moment to let the day fall behind you. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the rhythm of your breath slow, just a little. This is your time. A quiet hour, a time to dream, to imagine, to remember stories older than stone. Tonight, I'll be telling you the story of Prometheus, a story born in the firelight of ancient Greece, passed down through centuries, and still flickering in the edges of our world. It is a tale of gods and rebellion, of punishment and courage, of light stolen from the heavens and brought down to earth so we could see in the dark. But more than that, it is the story of what it means to care, for people you'll never meet, for a future you may never see. Prometheus was not the strongest of the Titans, not the loudest, not the most feared, but he changed everything with a single act of defiance. So settle in. Let the myth unfold slowly, like the embers of a dying fire sparking back to life. And if this story brings you comfort tonight, if it helps you rest, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else who needs a quiet moment in a noisy world. That small act helps keep our flame alive too. Now breathe in, and let's begin. This is Prometheus, the Firebringer. Chapter 1. The Titans and the Rise of Zeus. Before the birth of men, before cities rose from dust and language took root in the mouths of mortals, there was chaos, boundless, silent, eternal. From its swirling depths emerged Gaia, the earth, solid and fertile, and Uranus, the sky, vast and unyielding. Together they bore children of unimaginable power, the Titans, primeval beings shaped not of flesh and blood, but of storm and stone, of time and fire. Among these Titans, one stood apart, not for his might or wrath, but for his mind. His name was Prometheus, which means forethought, and unlike his siblings, he did not thunder when he walked or crack mountains with his fists. He watched, he learned, he thought ahead. Prometheus was the son of Iapetus, the pillar-bearing Titan, and Climon, an Oceanid of gentle wisdom. His brothers were Menoetius, whose arrogance would be his ruin, Atlas, the bearer of the heavens, and Epimetheus, whose name meant afterthought, a cruel irony that time would make plain. But Prometheus, he was different. Even among his family, he was an enigma. He was fascinated not only with what was, but with what could be. In the early days of the world, when the stars were young and the earth still steamed from its making, the Titans ruled in majesty. Cronus, their king, had overthrown his own father, Uranus, in a storm of betrayal and blood. He took the throne of the cosmos and shaped the world in his image, strict, cold, absolute. Prometheus watched all of this with a calculating silence. He saw the hubris of Cronus, the fear in the hearts of the Titans, and the way power begot tyranny. He knew, in the depths of his mind, that this rule too would fall. It was only a matter of time. Time in those days did not march. It thundered. When Rhea, the sister and queen of Cronus, bore children, Cronus feared prophecy. He had heard the whisper of fate, that one of his own sons would rise against him, just as he had risen against Uranus. To prevent this, he devoured each child as they were born. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, one after the other, swallowed into darkness. But Rhea, heartbroken and cunning, saved her last son. She bore him in secret and gave Cronus a swaddled stone in place of the babe. Cronus swallowed it without question, and the boy, Zeus, was hidden in a cave upon Mount Ida, and nursed by the milk of a divine goat, and guarded by warriors who drowned his cries with the clash of their swords. Prometheus, ever watchful, knew of the child, and he waited. Years passed, and the world aged. Zeus grew strong. When the time was right, he returned to confront his father. With Rhea's aid and the cunning of Gaia, Cronus was forced to disgorge his swallowed children. The gods emerged, fully formed and furious, and stood beside their brother. Thus began the Titanomachy, the war of the Titans. The battle shook the bones of the earth and tore the heavens asunder. Titans clashed with gods in a cataclysm of raw power. The mountains groaned beneath their feet. Oceans boiled. Stars wept from the sky. Prometheus, though a Titan, stood apart from his kin. He saw the future burning in Zeus's eyes, and he chose to side with Olympus. It was not loyalty that drove him. It was conviction. He believed in change, in the evolution of power. Cronus had ruled through fear and stagnation. Zeus promised something different, a world of order, of thought, perhaps even progress. Prometheus gave Zeus counsel, quiet and clever. He taught him strategy, how to anticipate not just actions, but consequences. It was Prometheus who advised the forging of lightning, who whispered of the storm beneath Typhon's prison, who guided the younger gods as they learned the art of war. Without Prometheus, Zeus may not have won. In the end, the Titans fell. Cronus was overthrown and cast into the depths of Tartarus, a prison of eternal torment beneath the earth. Atlas, mighty and defiant, was condemned to hold up the sky for all time. The old order was broken, and the age of the Olympians began. Zeus, in his triumph, crowned himself king of the gods, and sat upon a throne of marble and cloud atop Mount Olympus. He divided the world among his brothers. Poseidon claimed the sea, Hades took the underworld, and Zeus ruled the sky. For his loyalty, Prometheus was offered a place of honor among the new gods, but he declined it. He did not trust the new king. For although the face had changed, Prometheus saw that Zeus ruled no less arrogantly than his father. The lightning bolt had replaced the sickle, but the thirst for dominion burned just as fiercely. It was then that Prometheus turned his gaze away from Olympus, away from the petty squabbles of gods. He looked instead to Earth, to humankind. They were a new creation, formed by the hands of the gods, shaped from clay and spirit. But they were flawed, frightened, and helpless, naked beneath the stars. Their nights were long, their food raw, their hearts filled with fear. To the gods, they were little more than playthings, amusements, burdens, or pawns. But Prometheus saw something else. He saw potential. In their eyes burned curiosity. In their souls stirred defiance. They were weak, yes, but not without promise. And Prometheus, ever the visionary, saw in them the seeds of something greater. He would become their champion, their teacher, their guardian. And for this choice, the heavens would never forgive him. Chapter 2. Prometheus, the Trickster. Prometheus walked among mortals, not as a god, but as something stranger, an eternal being who chose to linger in the realm of the perishable. He watched as they struggled to till the earth with bare hands, and carved their stories into stone with trembling fingers. They had no warmth in the cold months, no shelter from the beasts that stalked the dark. The gods had made them, yes, but abandoned them soon after, more amused by their flaws than invested in their survival. To Zeus, humans were a passing curiosity. To Prometheus, they were the future. And so, he began to teach them. He showed them how to read the stars, how to plant by the moon's rhythm and reap by the sun's blessing. He whispered secrets of healing herbs and taught them the language of wind and river. He instructed them in the making of tools from stone and bone, helped them shape dwellings from wood and clay, and gave names to things once feared. But the most sacred knowledge, the one that could truly lift man above beast, was forbidden. Fire. Fire was the soul of the gods, their eternal flame. It danced on Olympus in golden hearths, guarded by Hestia, cloaked in divine lore. Fire meant control. It meant warmth in the cold, light in the night, power over the wild. It was the spark that separated mortality from divinity. Zeus had decreed that fire belonged to Olympus alone. If mortals were to survive, they would do so in the dark, weak, obedient, grateful. Prometheus disagreed. He did not defy Zeus openly, not at first. He was too wise for that. Instead, he played the long game. He sowed doubt among the gods, softened their vigilance, waited for a moment when their pride would open a door. It came at a feast. Every 9 years, mortals were required to make a grand sacrifice to the gods, to show gratitude, humility, and reverence. They would burn the choicest cuts of meat upon an altar, letting the smoke rise to Olympus, while they consumed what was left. But Prometheus had a trick in mind. He took a great ox and divided it into 2 piles. In one, he placed all the bones, wrapped in gleaming fat that shimmered in the firelight. In the other, he hid the finest cuts of meat beneath the dark stomach lining, foul and unappealing to the eye. Then he asked Zeus to choose. The king of the gods, proud and quick-tempered, surveyed the 2 piles. He scoffed at the dark, humble wrapping of the second, and was drawn to the sheen of the fat-covered bones. He chose it without hesitation. When he discovered the deception, His fury erupted like a storm. "You dare mock me," he thundered. "You teach mortals to cheat the divine?" But Prometheus only smiled and bowed, as if innocent. It was a gamble, and Prometheus knew the cost. Zeus, furious at being made a fool before the court of Olympus, struck down his decree: no fire shall touch the hands of man. He ordered Hephaestus, the divine smith, to extinguish every mortal flame. He scoured the earth of embers and sparks, leaving the world to shiver in darkness. Mankind suffered. The winds howled and the forests creaked. Beasts stalked the villages unchecked. Crops withered beneath frost. Death crept closer each night, and the eyes of mortals turned upward, not to pray, but to wonder if the gods had ever cared at all. Prometheus watched from a distant hill. He heard their cries and saw their fear, and he made his decision. In secret, under the cloak of night, Prometheus ascended Mount Olympus. He walked the halls of the gods, silent as shadow, passing the sleeping forms of immortals who had long ceased to look downward. At the hearth of the gods, where the eternal flame burned, a flame that had never known extinction, Prometheus stole a single glowing coal and concealed it within a hollow stalk of fennel. He carried it down the mountain into the world of men. The moment the fire touched human hands, it was as if the world breathed for the first time. Flames licked upward from their hearths. Shadows retreated. The cold was driven out. With fire came forging, cooking, shaping. With fire came transformation. Mankind began to rise. They built homes of brick and mortar. They shaped bronze with hammers and bellows. They cooked their food, cured their meat, and hardened their blades. No longer victims of nature, they became its stewards, and sometimes its masters. But fire was not only a gift, it was a weapon. It could warm or burn. It could illuminate or blind. Prometheus had given them power, but with it came choice, and with choice came consequence. Zeus saw the flames rising on earth and knew at once who had defied him. The trick at the feast had been forgivable. Embarrassing, yes, but tolerable. But this was rebellion. Prometheus had not merely challenged Zeus, he had undone his will, and for that, the punishment would be eternal. Chapter 3: The Theft of Fire. The skies above Olympus were clear, blue as lapis, and silent as a secret. Below, the earth turned slowly under the gaze of the gods. Mortals toiled, unaware of what stirred in the mind of one who watched from the threshold between heaven and the world below. Prometheus stood at the edge of Olympus, eyes turned not toward the glory of the golden halls behind him, but downward, toward earth. The mountaintop temples, the celestial banquets, the marble laughter of immortals held no joy for him anymore. His gaze pierced the veil of cloud and wind, drawn always to the world of men, fragile, flickering, unarmed against the night. He had seen them huddle in darkness, their hands clawing at cold soil, their mouths dry from hunger, their faces pale from fever. They were weak by design, born without the claws of beasts or the wings of birds. They had no venom, no fangs, no armor but their minds, and even those, unshaped, uncertain, incomplete. Yet Prometheus saw something in them that no god did. He saw courage where others saw fear. He saw wonder in their questions. He saw that they could be more than they were, if only they had the means. And among all the gifts denied to them by the gods, agriculture, poetry, metallurgy, there was one above all others that Zeus had forbidden: fire, the sacred flame, the divine spark. To the Olympians, fire was not merely warmth, it was power, it was knowledge, it was creation. Fire belonged to the gods, and the gods alone. It burned eternal in the hearth of Olympus, where Hestia kept it alive with reverence, feeding it as one feeds the soul of a kingdom. Zeus had declared long ago that no mortal hand would ever touch it. Without fire, mankind would remain in the shadows. Without fire, they could not forge tools, could not cook meat, could not drive back the creatures of night. Without fire, they could not rise. Prometheus knew what he was contemplating. This would not be mischief. This would not be a prank or a trick. This would be theft. And not just any theft. This was a wound against divine order, a declaration that the wisdom of Olympus was flawed, that the king of gods could be wrong. He considered the cost. He knew Zeus, knew his pride, his fury, his deep-rooted fear of challenge. He knew what price he might pay if caught. Not merely exile, not merely death, but punishment made eternal. Still, he chose. One night, when the gods were feasting, their voices echoing in song and wine, Prometheus moved quietly through the sacred halls of Olympus. No trumpets announced him, no lightning barred his way. He walked as if he belonged, because he once had. He entered the hearth chamber, where the divine flame danced and hummed like a living thing. It was beautiful, pure, golden, almost alive. It cast no smoke, only light. Its heat was not cruel, but steady and strong. Prometheus knelt beside it, and with hands that trembled, not from fear, but from reverence, he reached into a nearby brazier and lifted a single coal. He placed it inside the hollow stalk of a fennel plant, which burned slowly and did not go out. The fire nestled inside like a heartbeat. Then he turned and descended Olympus. He walked alone through the clouds, down the sacred slopes, across mountain and river and forest, until at last he reached the land of men. They saw him approach with wonder. His presence was quiet, not blinding, yet every eye turned toward him. Children clutched their mothers. Elders bowed without knowing why. The wind held its breath. And when he opened the stalk and let the fire free, the world changed. Flames licked upward into the night, golden and wild, as if the stars themselves had fallen to earth. Men and women gathered around it, their faces painted in firelight, eyes wide with awe. They reached out cautiously, felt its heat, then drew back in astonishment. Then again, they reached, and this time, they stayed. For the first time, they were warm. For the first time, the darkness did not terrify. Prometheus showed them how to feed the fire with wood, how to use it to cook meat, how to shape stone into blade and clay into vessel. He taught them to forge iron, to temper bronze, to use fire as a tool and a teacher. With fire came art. With fire came thought. With fire came civilization. Prometheus watched in silence, his task complete. He felt no need for praise. He did not speak. He only smiled. But far above on Olympus, Zeus saw the smoke. He felt it before he saw it. An unfamiliar tremor in the air, a taste of something unpermitted. The fire of Olympus had been duplicated. A spark meant only for gods now danced in mortal hands. And with that spark came independence. Zeus rose from his throne. His fury was not immediate. It was not the rash lightning of insult or jealousy. It was colder, deeper, more calculated. He had been challenged, not by an enemy, but by one of his own, a titan who had once been an ally, a god who had dared give his children what Zeus had denied. And worse still, the fire had taken root. It could not be undone. He could destroy the villages that used it. He could cast down flames with storms and send floods to wipe the hearths clean. But he knew, even in his fury, that the damage was done. Mankind had tasted divinity. They would never go back. So Zeus turned his rage not to fire, not to man, but to Prometheus, to the one who had dared believe in something greater than fear, to the one who had looked at weak, dying creatures and seen worth. And the punishment he crafted would not be swift. It would be legend. Chapter 4. The Punishment of Prometheus. The wind never ceased on the Caucasus. It howled across the jagged peaks like a mournful choir, threading through snow-slick crags and broken stone. Here, chained to the highest cliff face, Prometheus endured. Days turned to seasons. Seasons bled into centuries. And still he hung, arms outstretched, wrists torn and rusted in divine iron. His body, though divine, bore the weight of time in ways no mortal could understand. His once proud form had grown gaunt, his skin, burned and frozen, healed only to be flayed again. Yet in his eyes there remained a fierce and unrelenting light. Each morning the eagle came. It descended from the clouds on wings like thunderheads, its cry sharp enough to split stone. With cruel precision, it tore into Prometheus's side, ripping out his liver and swallowing it whole. Blood ran down the rock in rivulets. His screams echoed through the valley, mournful yet filled with fire. At night, the pain gave way to aching silence, and in that silence, his body repaired itself. Muscle knit, flesh reformed. The liver regrew, slow and methodical, an immortal curse to match an immortal will. He was alone. The gods had turned their faces. Even those who once walked beside him in Olympus now spoke his name in hushed tones, if at all. Only the mountain, ancient and unmoved, bore witness to his suffering. But Prometheus did not regret. In his solitude, he watched the smoke of village fires in the far distance. He heard, faint as the breath of leaves, the laughter of children, the sound of hammers against anvils, the rhythm of progress. He imagined mortals gathering around flames to tell stories, share bread, and speak of the stars. That was his legacy. Not temples, not statues, but warmth and wonder. Zeus knew this too, and it angered him. He had crafted this punishment to erase Prometheus from memory, to make an example of him to gods and mortals alike. Yet the opposite had occurred. The myth of the chained firebringer had become a beacon. Among men, he was revered as the first benefactor of humankind. Among gods, a reminder that even immortals could be wrong. And slowly, cracks began to form, not in the rock, but in Olympus itself. Not all gods agreed with Zeus's cruelty. Some whispered of mercy, of balance. Others remained silent but watched, waiting for the world to shift. Yet none dared to intervene. None except one. From the plains of the mortal world, where great beasts roamed and the sky was an endless vault of fire and blue, a figure rose, not a god, but something close. His name was Heracles. Born of Zeus and a mortal woman, Heracles carried in his veins the thunder of Olympus and the resolve of earth. He was no stranger to hardship. The labors placed upon him by the gods were legendary. Battles with lions, hydras, stables reeking of filth and sin. But Heracles was not only a warrior, he was a breaker of chains. It was during one of these great labors that he found himself wandering the Caucasus Mountains. The path was perilous, the winds sharp as blades, but Heracles was not deterred. He had heard the stories, the chained god, the eternal torment, the eagle, and as he climbed higher, his heart stirred, not with fear, but with anger. When at last he beheld Prometheus, bound and bloodied upon the cliff face, his breath caught. Here was no monstrous criminal, no proud defiler of Olympus, but a figure of endurance, eyes hollowed by time, yet burning still with dignity. The eagle came, as it always did, but this day was different. Heracles, with bow in hand, drew back a single arrow. It whistled through the sky and struck the beast between the wings. The eagle shrieked, flailed, then plummeted into the void. Prometheus sagged against the chains, eyes wide, not in pain, but in awe. The silence that followed was immense. Not even the wind dared speak. Then Heracles stepped forward. With strength no man had ever wielded, he grasped the chains. They groaned under his grip, divine metal shrieking in protest. One by one, he tore them from the rock. Sparks flew, stone cracked, and Prometheus fell to the earth. Not broken, but free. For the first time in eons, he stood, unshackled. He looked to the horizon, where the sun began to rise, golden and warm. He said nothing. There was no need. The world had changed again. Chapter 5. Pandora's Box and the Price of Defiance. In the aftermath of Prometheus's liberation, the world felt different. Not just in the shifting winds or the glow of firelight on the horizon, but in the unseen balance between gods and men, now irrevocably disturbed. Prometheus was free, yes, but Zeus had not forgotten. The king of Olympus did not rage, nor did he thunder from his throne. His vengeance this time would not fall on Prometheus directly. That chapter was closed. His punishment had been endured, his defiance immortalized. But man had been the reason for it all. It was for man that Prometheus had stolen fire. It was man who burned bright in the night, daring to dream, daring to build. Zeus had watched mortals grow bold. Fire had not humbled them, it had lifted them. They grew clever, curious, less afraid. Already they built cities. Already they questioned the heavens. So Zeus devised a new punishment, one that would not chain limbs, but unravel hearts. Not brute force, but quiet corrosion. He called upon Hephaestus, the forger of all things, and to him Zeus gave a commission unlike any before. Create a being, a woman, perfect in beauty, form, and grace. Hephaestus shaped her from earth and water, molding her limbs with reverence, her face with serene symmetry. Aphrodite breathed love into her smile. Hermes gave her words that danced like silver on the tongue. Athena clothed her in fine linen and taught her skill in weaving. From the hours she received the bloom of springtime, from the graces, charm, and allure. She was not born of mortal womb or divine thunder, but of intent. Every breath in her was a thread in Zeus's tapestry of revenge. Her name was Pandora, all gifted. And with her, Zeus sent a jar. Its surface was etched with runes in a tongue now lost. Its seal was tight, its contents unknown. To Pandora, it was simply a gift. She was told never to open it, but Zeus knew what he had crafted. Pandora was given to Prometheus, brother of Prometheus, the one who did not think ahead. Though warned by his wiser sibling never to accept gifts from the gods, Prometheus was helpless before her beauty. He welcomed her into his home, his arms, his heart. And for a time, all was well. Pandora moved through the world like springtime come to life. She sang as she wove, laughed in the sunlight, and lit torches at dusk with hands born of flame. Mortals loved her. They forgot to fear. But within her, curiosity bloomed. She stared often at the jar. It called to her, not in voice, but in silence. A silence that grew louder with each passing day. One morning, when the wind was still and the sky held no clouds, she lifted the lid. What followed was not fire. It was everything else. Out of the jar flew the hidden legacies of Zeus's wrath. Disease, with its choking breath and invisible touch. Famine, with hollowed eyes and gnawed bones. Jealousy, hatred, greed, a swarm of sorrows, black-winged and shrieking, tearing across the earth. War marched from the jar in rusted armor. Deceit slithered forth like smoke. Madness laughed as it fled into the corners of men's minds. Pandora cried out and tried to close the jar, but it was too late. The world had changed again. This time, not by gift, but by poison. Only one thing remained at the bottom. A single, fragile shimmer. Hope. It trembled there, small and flickering, yet unextinguished. Pandora, with trembling hands, closed the lid and held it tight. Some say she kept it safe. Others say she released even that. But in the hearts of men, something endured. They suffered now. They aged. They wept and bled and buried their dead. But they also sang and dreamed and lit fires in the dark. Prometheus had given them power. Pandora had given them consequence. And in the dance between the two, between gift and grief, humanity found itself. Chapter 6. The long suffering and the hero's redemption. There are stories that fade with time, legends that grow dim as the centuries pass, whispered only in ruined temples and crumbling scrolls. But the story of Prometheus is not one of them. His name endures, not because he ruled an empire, nor because he commanded armies, but because he chose to suffer for others. He became the flame that would not go out. Even after the chains were broken and the eagle slain, Prometheus did not return to Olympus. He did not kneel before Zeus or claim reward for his pain. He wandered the edges of the world instead, silent, solitary, and watching. The mountains remembered him. The winds carried his name. And across the earth, fires still burned. There is something singular about Prometheus, something that separates him not only from gods, but from every other figure of myth. He is not a warrior like Heracles, nor a king like Agamemnon. He is not beloved like Orpheus, nor cursed like Sisyphus. He is something else entirely. He is a rebel, but not for glory. He is a savior, but not through conquest. He is a god who sided with man, and in that he became more human than divine. Long after his suffering ended, the world he changed continued to evolve. Mortals built cities of marble and wood. They forged tools, wrote poetry, studied stars, and asked dangerous questions. They looked inward as much as they looked upward. They created philosophies and tore down tyrannies. They painted their pain and danced their joy. They challenged each other and the heavens. They fell again and again, but they rose too. Every generation lit their own fires from the ones before, and in every flame there was Prometheus. His story spread beyond the borders of Greece, whispered in different tongues, adapted in different faiths. Some called him a thief, others called him a prophet. But all who told his story understood one thing. He chose suffering not because he had to, but because someone had to. There is a kind of love in that, a love so vast it defies logic, a love that risks wrath for the sake of strangers. Prometheus did not demand worship. He did not ask for shrines. His gift was not conditional. It was freely given, like fire itself, warmth without asking, light without demand. And yet, the world did not forget him. They carved his name in stone. They wrote it in books. They stitched it into philosophy. The thinkers of Athens invoked him as the first questioner of divine order. The playwrights placed him on stage, chained still, crying out truths the gods dared not speak. Aeschylus gave him voice, one of rage, sorrow, and unyielding purpose. I know the future, he says in those ancient lines. I see the end. I endure now so that others may be free. Others took up that vision. In every age of darkness, there were those who pointed to Prometheus and said, we must light the fire again. In revolutions, in discoveries, in moments of terrible courage, his flame flickered in the hearts of those who dared to defy injustice for a greater good. Even in modern times, when gods are forgotten and myths are shelved behind glass, Prometheus remains. In the scientist who risks exile to speak truth, in the artist who gives voice to the voiceless, in the teacher who opens a child's eyes, in every soul who chooses compassion over safety, sacrifice over silence, Prometheus walks among them still. But what of Zeus? What of the gods who punished him? In time, even Olympus faded. The gods grew quiet, their temples overtaken by vine and dust. The world moved on, as it always does. But Prometheus, chained to no stone now, remained in motion, not as a presence, but as a principle that whispers, knowledge is dangerous, but ignorance is worse. A principle that reminds us, suffering for others is not weakness. It is power, wielded with purpose. Some say he still walks the earth, quiet and watchful, cloaked in starlight. Others say he became the fire itself, that every torch, every lamp, every flicker of light in the human world is a piece of him, still burning. And when we gather around fire, in thought or story or purpose, we honor him, not with prayer, but with persistence. We remember him not for what he endured, but for what he gave. He gave us fire. He gave us freedom. And though the chains have long since rusted away, the truth remains. Prometheus is still with us, in every spark that defies the dark.